Greetings. Welcome to a quick lesson on the troubleshooting methodology. We'll follow up with some scenarios and some examples and different lessons, but for now we're just going to go over the basics of this methodology. So, when a system breaks down, what do you do to fix the problem, right? Something's not working. What can you do? So we'll go over some steps. This is the expanded version. Some of these steps can go together. So in this case, we'll have 8, but you can kind of bring it down to 6, depending on where you're looking. But the concept is kind of the same as you're going through all of these steps. So step number 1, identify the problem. What is not working? Gather information. Sometimes it's super simple, right? The computer doesn't turn on, right? That is the problem. But again, try to figure out as much as you can in this process so you can see, is it not turning on? Is it not starting? Is there no light on? Again, you're gathering as much of this problem as you can. Does the computer not connect to the internet? Does the computer next to it connect to the internet, right? So again, identify the problem. Is the problem that the internet is down? Or is the problem that this computer can't connect to the internet, right? So this is what it's talking about when you gather information, duplicate the problem. If the computer next to it has internet, the internet's not down, so that's not a problem. That's not the problem, right? Can't duplicate that. Question users, when did it start? What are the symptoms? Does it come back at all? And then ask them, what have you done, right? Have you moved anything? Did you move the computer? Something get unplugged? So again, that identify the problem kind of gathers all that information for you. Step number 2, start researching the problem. And again, you can kind of see this right now where it says if applicable. So I'm going to turn my cool little laser pointer, right? If applicable. So again, these are where some of these things can be stuck together, because you could just go look in the back of the computer and be like, oh look, the Ethernet cable is not plugged in. And you learn that because they moved the computer and they didn't plug it back in when they moved it, so therefore the computer has no internet. But it might be other reasons, right? Everything's plugged in. Why is there no internet? And this is what we're talking about, research. You can research knowledge base and the internet. Basically, Google is the problem, right? And if you just Google my computer is not connected to the internet, you're going to get some stuff, but they're going to get a lot of stuff. So that's why that step 1 is so important, to gather as much information as possible, because maybe they installed a program, right? And then you can Google, my computer stopped working after I installed this program. So you can see that the key is to see if someone else has a issue with that. So again, establish a theory of probable cause. We'll go back to the fact that it was moved. So my theory is, and it was real quick, and sometimes this happens really quick in your head and you don't even realize it, but my theory is maybe it's not plugged in. That's why there's no internet, right? You moved it, did everything get plugged in, and go check that. And if the problem's big enough, you can go back and multiple approaches, right? So maybe it is plugged in, and maybe you have your companion go back and check to see if somehow it was disconnected from something, right? So a good example of this would be a Chromebook is not connecting. So you have one person sitting at the device actually checking to see if there's something wrong with the device, and then in one of my cases, the device had been unenrolled from the system, so you couldn't have done anything on the device to fix it. You had to go back into the system to re-enroll it. So again, divide and conquer, if that makes sense. That's an example of when divide and conquer can happen and help you. So try to figure out what is the probable cause. So you can these can kind of go together, because you might need more research too as you're going through the probable cause research, those theories. So test your theories, right? Uninstall the program. You think the internet is broken because of this program? Uninstall it. See what happens. The internet come back. If that doesn't work, you can reinstall the program and test something new, right? You kind of go in a little circle here in step 4 and 3 as you're, all right, let's see this and go on. One key piece to this as you're going through is do one thing at a time. If you think it might be this program and also they need to change a setting in the network and some other thing, if you do all of them at the same time, you don't know which one was the actual problem. So do one, if it doesn't work, do the next one, if it doesn't work, do the next one, and see where it goes. I'm guilty of this. Sometimes you just try a few things. One big one too is with Chrome. When you turn off extensions, sometimes I like to turn off a bunch of them, and then I don't know which of any of the extensions I just turned off was the actual culprit. So again, sometimes it takes a lot of time, but test one theory at a time. So then establish a plan of action, and then identify potential effects, right? If we do this, what's going to happen? If we connect this, what's going to happen? If we uninstall the program that they needed, what's going to happen, right? So some of these take bigger effects than just plugging in something. You might need to configure something differently. There might be a workaround, like if I install this another program, it will fix the issue. But now what happens when I install that second program to get the internet to work? Right? What could happen to that? And then implement the solution, whether it be that third program, checking the network, disabling an extension, and then go back and make sure everything else is working, right? You fix the internet, but maybe you broke the camera. So again, make sure things are going, and a lot of this might be telling the user this step so they can work with you, or again, as that whole teamwork, divide and conquer. But this is one of the if applicable, because sometimes, internet turns back on, good to go. But it is good to make sure that you are monitoring the situation depending on what your solution is, which again goes back to that, make sure you understand what's going to happen afterwards, right? And then identify the potential, essentially I would call it side effects, right? And then finally, and this is super important, we talked about the whole knowledge base and checking the internet. Document it, write it down somewhere. Have a Google Doc or a repository of files that you have that says this was the issue, this will happen. And particularly for bigger things that you spend a lot of time troubleshooting, finding, and then there's a bunch of steps that you need to do to fix it. Write those down because it might happen again, right? So step 8 is also very important to this process. If only to help someone else, put it on a blog. Hey, I just learned this, so when someone else Googles it, they're like, oh, they had the problem, you've already solved it for them. And then finally, I'll leave you with this. You can pause it to read it all, or you can probably find this, because here's the link to it. It is a very good thing of really putting help desk people out of jobs if people will just use Google and do a little bit of research and kind of try around with it. So with that is the troubleshooting methodology. The essentially 6 to 8 steps, but the process is still the same, right? You're going through that. Some of them you may be able to skip, some you go faster through. Some of them I've spent hours researching problems. So again, depending on what you're doing, you're still going to go through those steps. So with that, we will see you next lesson.